Chris asks, how much does Braxton Jones need to improve so that Fashanu is not our first pick next year? Chris, this is actually a phenomenal question, and the deeper and deeper I dove into Braxton Jones' film, the more and more complex the answer to this question got, because on one hand, Braxton Jones ended the season a plus player in the Chicago Bears run game, if not a leader outright in the Bears rushing attack. He's the best mover on the Bears offensive line, and in crack toss or pin and pull situations, Braxton Jones is their designated puller, and when he gets out into space, he is electric. But on the other hand, Braxton Jones is a former 5th round pick. He comes with his limitations. And despite how long and how quick he is, he also plays with an obnoxiously high center of gravity that it seems like gives him real trouble when he's anchoring in pass pro, and may never be something he's able to fix as he grows. The Bears support him schematically with things like run action, play action that turn his pass blocking into run blocking, as well as more conventional measures like running back tight end chips and condensed formations that change rushing angles and give Braxton an advantage. But there's probably a ceiling to how good a pass protector he'll ever be, and while that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a low ceiling, it likely won't be as high as that of a potential 1st round pick. And of course there's more to Braxton Jones' game, but let's get there when we get there, because any conversation about Braxton Jones has to start the same way conversations about Charles Leno did years ago, and that's a question about value. Right now, Braxton Jones accounts for less than $1 million a year on the cap. That means that if you took Braxton Jones and added free agent signing TJ Edwards and free agent signing Nate Davis, only then do you finally add up to the average contract value it would have taken to sign Mike McGlinchey like Denver did, despite McGlinchey being relatively NFL average throughout his career so far. I don't take PFF's grading scale as gospel, but out of the 57 tackles that played significant action this year, they had McGlinchey, again, $17.5 million cap hit as the 29th best tackle overall. If you want to prove an option at tackle, and notice I didn't say a good option at tackle, you're still going to have to pay for it. Whereas in the literal case of Braxton Jones, the cap savings he represents are part of what allowed the Bears to afford extra help on the offensive line, which will likely make Braxton look better in 2023 than he did in 2022. And of course, you don't have to pay for your tackle. You could spend a 1st round pick instead, maybe just like the top of the video suggested on Penn State's Olu Fashanu. But that's a 1st round pick that could become a defensive end, a star 3 technique, an extra wide receiver, or one of the other many premium positions within the NFL. And if you didn't want to go with the premium position, you could potentially get a star guard, just like Peter Skoronski was in this last draft, to continue to beef up an interior offensive line that may need help going forward, depending on how Cody Whitehair, Tevin Jenkins, or yes, even Nate Davis play next season. Braxton Jones is a floor, maybe not the highest floor in the world, but a floor nevertheless at dirt cheap below market value. And assuming that Braxton can stay as healthy as he stayed last year, you're talking about 3 more years of incredible value at one of the most expensive positions in the sport. So to start this conversation off, the bar may not be particularly high in the eyes of some for what Braxton Jones has to do, because as long as he's a push player on the football field, let alone a plus player in literally any avenue, his value is being inexpensive enough that the Bears can afford help at other areas. But obviously contract value doesn't help you convert a 3rd and 1 in the run game or a 3rd and 10 in the pass game. So let's talk about another corollary and where Braxton Jones differs from a story told only last year in former 5th round pick Larry Borom, also on the Chicago Bears. Because it's not so long ago that fans really were hailing Larry Borom as the potential answer at right tackle, and only a couple games into the Bears' 2022 season, he was benched for Riley Reiff and seemingly lost his shot at a starting spot within the Matt Eberflus regime. So what's different between Braxton Jones and Larry Borom? Well, in a nutshell, Larry Borom's upside was never in the run game, it was always in the pass game. So as teams figured out that Larry had a weak anchor, suddenly you saw Nick Bosa, Rashad Gary, and pretty much every other rusher on the early part of the schedule start to bull rush Larry Borom and victimize that weak anchor, turning the only thing Larry Borom really brought to the offensive line into a negative, and suddenly you had a player that was neither helping you in the run game nor helping you in the pass game. And when a player's helping you in neither thing, the fact that they're cheap simply isn't enough to keep them on the football field, and somebody like Riley Reef that can raise the floor of that right tackle spot a little better was brought in to help. But contrast this with Braxton Jones, where while the left tackle position isn't known for its ability to contribute in the run game, the Bears are getting a lot of mileage with trap runs, screens, and maybe most famously the quarterback designed runs that Justin Fields runs in the red zone, where Braxton Jones is maybe the most important blocker in the package that's ultimately able to put points on the board for the Bears. It is hard for me to overstate just how impressive Braxton Jones was as a rookie in this Bears running scheme. Whether he needed to drive a defender clear out of their gap, turn a defensive end's shoulders so the running back could get upfield, get out in space and make a play, Braxton Jones didn't just do it well, he did it so consistently that anytime you think of a designed run working in the Bears season, you're probably remembering that run hitting on the left side, and that's on purpose. Nothing speaks louder volumes to me than the trust Luke Getsy showed in this rookie offensive tackle, as midway through the season, whenever the Bears needed a yard or two in the ground game, they turned to the left-hand side and asked Braxton to go help them get it. And while this comes from a game where the Bears got trounced, my favorite example of this is that Cole Kmet pitch to Justin Fields from Week 17's Detroit game, where Braxton Jones, who's out in space, leads the charge to convert a huge 3rd and 1 that turns into a massive explosive play on a drive that, of course, ends in the end zone. Braxton Jones is a plus player in this Chicago Bears running game, and to me that means you've got some give in his pass protection given the value he's bringing in such a cheap contract. And I don't want to sugarcoat his pass protection issues either. Braxton's arms are really long, and you'd think that would make him a solid striker with his hands, but that piece of his technique is something he's still learning, and right now he still catches his rusher a bit too often, and that can lead to his weak anchor weakening even more. He also has a bad tendency when he's in his shuffle to open his hips up wide and create what Brandon Thorne, the offensive line expert, would call a soft corner around the edge, that any edge with power is able to bend around quickly and create pressure on Justin Fields in a hurry. And while some of these reps can be mitigated as Braxton becomes a better striker with his hands, his center of gravity is exceptionally high, and while he's a tall player, he plays like he's exceptionally tall, which makes him vulnerable to snatches that pull his weight forward or power rushes that push his center of gravity backwards and put him on his heels. I hate to simplify everything to physics, but Braxton Jones would have to completely redesign the way that he moves, which is hard for just about anybody to do. He can improve his core strength and incrementally make his anchor better, but his real way forward is going to be winning first contact and slowing down rushers, and thankfully we got some great examples of this in the late part of the season as Braxton was able to get his hands a little further inside on his defensive lineman's shoulder pads and translate a lot of the power we've seen in his run game to his pass protection, as well as use his length to his advantage to spar with an edge rusher like this play against Aiden Hutchinson, where a couple well-delivered left hands stalls out Hutchinson's rush and lets Justin Fields get a throw off relatively unaffected. But especially against the ultra-talented edge rushers that are all over the league, that all come from the first round and all have alien combinations of size, speed, and strength, Braxton Jones is more than likely going to struggle in a way that reminds me of old 72 from many years ago. Now that's the bad news, but there is good news, and that's all the different ways that the Bears can mitigate this, because while Braxton Jones may struggle against wide 9 edge rushers, the Bears can use things like chips and tricky formations to make sure that somebody else is in that edge rusher's way, and that Braxton Jones can take advantage of an edge rusher that's lost his first step and lost a little bit of momentum instead of facing the full brunt of the best that edge rusher can do. Not to mention, the Bears were such a run-heavy team in 2022 that unless they wholesale change their offense, chances are the Bears are going to continue deploying the run action play action that keeps Braxton Jones out of a standard pass set and instead puts him in a run block on a passing play and can lead to pockets just like we saw against Buffalo late in the year. There really are all kinds of ways the Bears can support Braxton Jones, and the best news for Braxton is that with the addition of Darnell Wright, there's a first-round pick on the other side of the line that likely won't need as much chip help or extra attention as many of the other tackles that Braxton played with. Now, obviously, that applies surprise for 2024 and beyond. Chances are in 2023, Darnell Wright is going to get plenty of help and have plenty of, let's call them, welcome to the NFL moments. But in the future, in theory, Wright could be left on an island and Braxton Jones could be the primary tackle that receives the chip, receives the extra block, receives the running back, receives all the extra help that would help mitigate his trouble while maximizing his ability to deliver you downs in the run game and taking advantage of that cheap contract. But the other side of that is that on a key 3rd and 12 where you absolutely have to have it, a chip may not be enough. And unfortunately, as we saw against Detroit, it can still mean the game ends with your quarterback on the ground. At the end of the day, I end up incredibly conflicted because the deeper I dig into football, the more obsessed I get with every single down. And a player like Braxton brings you way more value than his contract suggests on first down, second down, play action down, run downs, inside zone, outside zone, wide toss stretches, and even standard dropbacks on first and second down where the defense has to at least consider that they might be facing a running play. And it helps that Braxton's length and footwork does make him good at least getting in the way of the rusher he's facing so he doesn't lose quickly like we've seen some other Bears linemen do in the past. But I completely understand if you're thinking your left tackle has to be one of your premier pass protectors and the kind of guy you can leave alone against TJ Watt and still have a shot at getting 3 to 3.5 seconds of pocket time on a key 4th and 14 late in a game. At the end of the day, what Braxton Jones needs to do to impress me in 2023 is simply not have a sophomore slump. Remember, what creates these old school sophomore slumps is that a rookie player finishes his season, the rest of the NFL gets tape on what he is and isn't good at, and like we saw with Larry Borum, they attack his weak points, and if that player doesn't have an answer, they simply wash out of the league. In Braxton's case, the league is probably going to see similar flaws, but if Braxton improves his striking technique and his core strength just a little bit, I tend to think he'll win enough reps to not be a liability in pass protection, even if he needs consistent double team help in some form or another on big passing downs against great edge rushers. The value he brings to the Bears' creative running game as well as the team's cap situation are simply too valuable for me to throw out just because Braxton Jones isn't protecting the passer like what some people think a first-round pick would, which doesn't even account for the fact that a first-rounder's success simply isn't assured, like one of my favorite left tackle prospects, Evan Neal, who had a horrible season in New York last year. Add in that Darnell Wright's development is every bit as important as Braxton Jones, and that if he can prove he's worth being left on an island, you can help Braxton Jones consistently, and I think all Braxton has to do is hold water at his position and continue to lead from the front in the run game. With a quarterback as mobile as Justin Fields is, yes, he holds onto the ball often, but it means that blocking angles get all kinds of messy, and maybe most importantly, defensive ends aren't always going to be rushing full force and instead will play contain at times to simply try to keep Justin Fields in the pocket, and I think that means you probably don't need to be spending big draft resources or big money on 2 offensive tackles and can get away with 1 premier offensive tackle, hopefully that's Darnell Wright, and 1 cheap offensive tackle that you can help with a chip when needed, and all he's got to do is outperform his contract value. But I've talked enough. What do you think? Does Braxton Jones need to blow you away to remain the starter going forward? Would moving Braxton over to right tackle set your mind more at ease, even if that meant shifting right to left tackle? I wouldn't do it, but I know some people might. Does spending a first-round pick on offensive line next year feel to you like a better use of resources than, dare I say it, drafting Marvin Harrison alongside an edge rusher or a talented 3 technique? I want to know and I want to hear about it. So let me know in the comment section below. If you liked this video, please do give it a like. If you hated it, leave it a dislike and let me know what I can improve. And until next time, thanks so much for watching this, and I'll see you later.